Hello everyone. I want to start this video by saying I initially had good intentions, as the original goal was to see if I could make 1 million credits a month running an ethical company, proving that I can do more than just destroy everything around me. Instead, what you're going to see is the slow decline from humble beginnings all the way to Ruthless Megacorp, where taxes will be avoided. I owe 250,000 in taxes. Competition will be crushed. And watch the slow decline into insanity as I justify murdering millions of people just so I have an additional 2% of the ore market. Anyway, I began the game outside this independent planet with nothing more than the usual 20,000 credits and a single ship to my name. As you can tell, this run already had the markings of a humble origin story. However, I had already made my first mistake by leaving the tutorial one. Oh, for God's sake, I left the fucking tutorial on. Despite popular belief, I do know how to play this game, thank you. Now, for real though, starting with a single shade meant I'd already screwed myself out of doing efficient trade runs. The first thing we needed to do then was get some new ships. So it was time to do the galaxy a favor and bully our good old friends, the pirates. Pirates at the start of the game usually have nothing more than a horde of trash frigates. Things like hounds and kites, which 9 times out of 10 are useless. But when you have a total cargo capacity of 25, that decrepit hound with 5 S-mods looks mighty appealing. Anyway, I headed over to a nearby system where Tritech had posted a bounty for pirate activity and picked a fight with some of the scouts. Predictably, the fight that followed was 2.5 minutes of misery, as it was filled with failed maneuvers, counters, go harpoons, flares, until I had finally found a tactic that worked. Oh, what are you gonna do? I'm inside you. After smashing the pirate scout, I was able to recover both of the hounds, and following the advice of the tutorial, I headed to a nearby planet and slapped on some of the hottest trash I could find, and then ventured back out. Wanting to secure a couple more hounds, I spent the remainder of the bounty picking fights with pirates. Oh, they bounced! What the hell was that? Why am I alive? I should have died! And it didn't take too long before I had acquired a trio of hounds. It also seemed I had developed some kind of a reputation, as pirate fleets would rather fly into the sun. That guy just flew into the sun than face me in battle. Anyway, with my handful of combat freighters, I had grown my fleet capacity to a total of 250, which I thought was enough to satisfy my early trading needs. However, I happened to stumble across a pirate trade convoy. Not wanting to miss the opportunity of securing myself a proper trade ship, I took the battle. And after literally rounding their ships up and putting them down one by one, I was able to recover myself my very own pirate buffalo, which meant I was the pirate trader now. And my first job was to hoover up all the cargo for myself and sell it. Now I know what you're thinking. In that cargo manifesto, you clearly saw some drugs, and any moral person would discard them. Yeah, I didn't do that. After raising some initial capital for Rat Industries, it was time to make my first legal moves on the galactic market. So I headed to the capital of the Hedge, as this planet produces just about everything in the game. This is where I was going to make a name for myself, as a perfectly legal, reliable trader, whose origins is definitely not evolved around killing pirates and selling drugs. Anyway, so I began buying up cheap luxury goods and selling them to anyone who had a shortage. And I won't lie, I sold these goods on the black market. For those that don't know, selling on the open market in Starsector imposes tariffs, which means unless I'm willing to piss away 18% of my profits, which I'm not, I'd rather sell them illegally. This business model worked for a while until demand for what seemed to be just about everything dried up and the market was perfectly balanced. With the market balanced out, I took my profits and invested them in a few ships, one of them being an Enforcer, a staple of the low-tech ship chain and overall fun ship to use, mostly because I slapped on a bunch of these yellow torpedoes and rained hell on people. Oh, but he's overloaded by something. Throw out the 1,000,000 torpedoes I have. As you have probably guessed, I spent the next couple of months bullying pirates who had now become pirate raiders. And it didn't take too long before the Hedge and the League were back at war with each other. Now, this on itself is a tragic humanitarian disaster, but also an opportunity to make some money. Not wanting to miss the opportunity to exploit this, I set off on a trade expedition where I spent nearly every penny I had buying up cheap supplies. Once I arrived, I saw the Hedge had formed somewhat of a blockade around the Western East system, with a special task group guarding one of the gates and a few other fleets raiding trade convoys outside the system. This was another fantastic opportunity to make some money and do the right thing, because someone has to relieve all those people who are starving in that blockaded planet. So while lingering outside the system, I watched the hedge destroy one of the League's trade convoys, and shortly after, I spotted another one heading into the system. This convoy, however, was carrying heavy machinery and heavy armaments. Judging by the size of that fleet, that shipment alone was probably worth at least 300,000 credits, and it was only guarded by a handful of ships. Now, what was I to do? I could have let that trade fleet fly into the system, and then the hedge would have got their grubby little hands on it. Or, I could take it for myself. Let's be honest, they were dead already, and it was better the goods fell into my hands rather than their enemies. So, I killed the traders. After what we're going to call the mercy killing, I'm the trader now. Look at me. I'm the trader now. We salvaged over 600 heavy machinery, but more importantly, over 300 heavy armaments. Valued over 1,000 credits each, thanks to the shortage we may have caused, I ended up selling it all for a total of 500,000 credits. After dropping off those weapons, I had a quick look at the planet. It was clear that the hedge's blockade was having a devastating effect, and I couldn't help myself. I had to exploit this. By running goods backwards and forwards from the hedge to the League, the credits began piling up until the war stopped. With the war over, the markets began to balance out, and I needed to find a new way to make some money. In my mind, we needed to find a way to destabilize the market once again. And that's when I had a great idea. Terrorism. No, not committing acts of terror, but by bullying the Luddic path. You see, the Luddic path have 2 planets inside the core world, both in which have light industry and no orbital station. So all I would need is a handful of marines and a stockpile of fuel, and I would be able to steal all their goods. And let's be honest, no one's going to care, because they're the Luddic path. So after mustering up a small army, I headed over and smashed their defensive fleets, bombed their planets, and began raiding their spaceports. With their reduced access, they wouldn't be able to sell the goods on the open market, allowing me to harvest even more from them. With the planet now at my mercy, I began stealing everything their planets produced and selling the goods myself. 2,100. Then we're just going to stick the domestic goods that the planet desperately needs outside the planet in stable orbit. It's going to be just out of reach for them. Domestic goods, luxury goods, supplies, drugs, fuels, anything the planet had stockpiled was stolen and then sold for our profits. By leeching off these 2 planets, it didn't take us too long before we had entered the Millionaires Club, and both planets were left in ruins. I've raided this planet so many times, it's got minus 16 stability. With nothing really left to steal and a few revenge fleets after me, I thought it was time to flee the core worlds. With the Luddic path out for blood, I sold off my marines and headed towards the location of a couple of derelict ships outside the core worlds. Once I arrived, I managed to locate a tower-class carrier. Now, I wasn't too impressed as my fleet right now was pretty carrier-heavy, so I was hoping the next ship would be something different. The next ship was in fact a carrier. It's just an Astral here, just sat in perfect condition. I'll make sure to include that one in the video because we're going to get a horde of comments of people saying how bullshit that is. This absolute monster of a ship can hold a total of 6 fighter wings, has 2 large missile mounts and a ton of smaller mounts. Now, I know the sensible thing would be to throw on a mix of interceptors, heavy fighters and bombers, or I could throw on 6 sets of dagger bombers and laugh as we continue the trend of swamping people with torpedoes. But that would have to come later as we were still outside the core worlds, where I came across a fairly decent tundra planet, which had basic resources, was habitable, and also had 1,400 harvested organs on it. Now, I wasn't planning on joining the organ trade, but here we are. Upon returning to the core worlds, I stashed my loot inside this abandoned station, sold off some of the organs, and kitted out our new ship. With 2 Squall missiles and 6 torpedo bombers, I used my newfound power to refuse the government's attempts to make me pay taxes. I owe 250,000 in taxes. I'm not paying $250,000 in tax. And fled back outside the core worlds. While lingering outside the core worlds, I spent a majority of my time near this independent planet. Far away from the core worlds, I surveyed the surrounding systems, destroyed pirate stations, and terrorized the local remnants. That poor ship did not deserve that. While exploring, I found an arid planet, which was probably one of the best planets I'd found in a while. But sadly, it was the only planet inside this system, so it was no good. However, it did have a ship graveyard inside. which had both an Atlas and a Prometheus that I could recover. Next to the system though, I found a gold mine. Inside it had 4 volcanic planets, a gas giant which had an ancient fuel refinery, and a minefield, which yes, turns out the minefield was still active. Gas giant? Fucking that is a minefield. Plus, the system had a couple of barren worlds with no atmosphere, so they were perfect for some heavy industry. Now originally, I wanted to go down the humble route of farming and a little bit of light industry, but with a system that has an abundance of different ores and industrial capabilities, it would have been rude if I didn't go down the heavy industry route. So with that, I headed back to our little independent planet, loaded up as many crewmen as possible, and thus, Rat Industries was born. The following days, I colonized a couple of volcanic planets and the gas giant, and named the planets appropriately, the Hole, the Hole 2, and the Hole 3. And it wasn't long before my holes had carved out a small share of the ore market, and for the first time, Rat Industries was making a profit. Not a lot of money, but a profit nonetheless. However, just like every corporation, I wanted more. Now, I could go around and start burning down everyone else's mining operations, but unlike the food market, there was a lot of people in the mining industry. So I opted for Plan B, find the items and technology to improve the output of our mines, which I happened to find both the items next door in this high danger system. Inside the system, there was also this Terran world, which had a vast amount of resources, rich farmland, and was habitable. However, there was no way I was going to be able to colonize this planet as it was surrounded by a horde of remnants. After installing these new items, the cash began to pour in, and I believed it was time to start growing our planets. Now, because all of our planets had such high hazard ratings because of the whole it being pretty hot, it meant that the only way to grow these planets was going to be by bribing people. And with a hazard rating of 250%, our capital was now costing us just under 30,000 credits a month, all for a measly 7% growth. Upon reaching level 4 though, we got the usual issues. The Hedge hated me for my tech use, the League hated me for not simping to them, and the Pirates just hated us regardless. Oh, and the Luddic Path had decided they wanted to fuck around with my holes. Wait. But what they didn't know is I had a shiny new ship called the Fury. With 2 heavy blasters and safety overrides, this ship laid waste to basically anything the Luddic Path threw at me. Deciding to do the galaxy a favor, but mostly myself, I headed over to their base of operations and nuked them out of existence. But killing the pirates and the Luddic Path was easy enough. What wasn't so easy was fighting the remnants, who had just decided to send a raid of my system. However, what the remnants didn't know is I had a secret weapon that I had picked up from the Luddic Path. A Prometheus Mark II. That's right, what you're looking at is a fuel ship that has been converted into a weapon of war. With a Storm Needler, a Hellborn cannon, and a ton of armor, my plan was to have this ship as a kind of anchor to hold the front line while I danced around the back with my Fury. That's right, boys. I have tactics nowadays. Once the remnants arrived, I was able to catch their fleets alongside one of the hedge inspectors. Combined, we were able to smash them and definitely not make any mistakes while doing it. Oh, I got baited. Oh, I got so baited. Ah! With the first fleet dead, I rushed back to my capital, where the other 3 fleets had been tied up with my orbital station. While they were trying to take down my station, I just sat behind them, shooting them in the back with my 2 heavy blasters, until I had destroyed all of their ships. With the remnants defeated then, I was ready to sit back and watch my empire grow. You know, I feel like it's in my corporate interest to not get blockaded. That doesn't sound very good for business, so I might just go haul myself out to the League for a little bit. With the League threatening to blockade me, I didn't really have much of a choice. I knew firsthand how devastating a blockade could be because of the hedge blockade earlier, so the only logical thing was to head to the capital and join the League. Now, joining the League does come with some benefits. We got protection from the Hedge and their pesty investigators. They sometimes helped us with some fights, and all this came for the low cost of 20% of your colony income. Using my newfound protection, I took this opportunity to give the Hedge the middle finger and put every single AI core I had harvested from the remnants to work. With all 4 volcanic planets now colonized, we have managed to carve out a significant chunk of the ore market. But you know what's more profitable than selling rocks? Selling metals. As combined, the metal and transpotonic markets were worth just under 1 million credits. So once my planets had hit level 4, I built some refining and expanded our profits even further. Since all my planets were basically going to have the same layout, I built a centralization bureau on my capital to further increase all of our production. This gave us an average of 22% of the refined goods market and pushed the whole profits to over 170,000 credits a month. Combined with all my other planets and the commission from the League, we were making just over 500,000 a month. To expand our profits further, I took the opportunity to exploit the fact that I was under the League's banner and ventured back to the core worlds with a handful of Marines. I had a simple goal. Anyone we were at war with, I was going to raid their refineries. However, this turned out to be a fairly difficult task, since a majority of the faction's refineries were either built on military planets or their capitals. Nevertheless, I was able to raid a handful of planets and push our market share up to around 31%, raking us in an additional 200,000 credits. But let's be honest, raiding people's planets were only a temporary solution to raising our profits, but conquering them would be permanent. With all my planets around level 5 at this point, it was time for the hostile takeover of our little corporate rivals over a Tritech. So I put together a fairly large invasion fleet and sent it towards their capital. Upon arrival, I split off from the main fleet and headed towards the other planet for a little raiding. Once I knocked out the station, I began the process of stealing all their AI cores and then their blueprints, in which I managed to roll exactly what I wanted, first time again. I got the Fury note! Oh, that's all I wanted! Oh, that's so good! Sadly, my attacking forces failed, so I returned home, built a bunch of Furies and Prometheus Mark IIs, and returned. This time, we didn't just conquer their capital, we ate the entire faction. With the hostile takeover of Tritech complete, it was only a matter of time before the planet stabilized and the profits would begin pouring in. During the war though, I'd also been stockpiling cash, which I used to buy the entire League myself. I'm not kidding. Every paycheck I received, I put towards buying the governorship of another planet under the League's control, until Rat Industries owned the entire faction from within. Furthermore, I also paid a visit to that high danger system and booted the remnants out and colonized that Terran world for myself. With all my assets I'd purchased from the League, a few planets colonized and some additional conquests, it wasn't long before I was earning way over my goal of 1 million credits a month. In fact, I was earning around 1.5 million credits, so I think we were just about done here. Achieving our goals, I believe there was only one thing left to do. Leave the Persian League. Right, fuck you, League. I'm out of here. Oh, reduce relations by 113. Did I just lose all my governorships? This is all storage. Yeah, turns out, you don't take everything with you. Anyway, I want to say thank you for watching this video. A big thank you to my Patreons and now channel members. And as always, new videos every...